Well, welcome to what is unfortunately going to be the last episode of Let's Go Racing. It's not exactly how I envisioned wrapping things up for the series, but unfortunately I hit my head again, and I've just had an unfortunate run with injuries, and more specifically head injuries. And yeah, that just leaves me in a place where I'm no longer willing to put myself in a position to take the risks necessary to race bikes or test them at a high level. And yeah, just this past 3 years and even longer has just been a really intense experience when it's come to racing and this video series. And yeah, I was just coming off of a scapula fracture, coming back from that, and then pretty much, in my first handful of rides back, just a simple crash. I probably took a bit of a risk and was really hungry to come back and do an episode on Trans BC. I just had a slide out, which put my head into a tree, and yeah, so I'm kind of back into dealing with another concussion. I don't think this one's nearly as bad as the last one, but this has been a real passion project for me. I'm not doing this to get rich, and I'm definitely not getting rich, making mountain bike videos and racing mountain bikes. Definitely wouldn't recommend getting into it if that's your goal. It's never really was mine either, but being that it's a passion project, I'm just not feeling that passion for it, given just a really unfortunate string of injuries. It doesn't make sense for me to put myself in that position where I'm risking a lot to do something I'm not fully invested in. Like, racing's one of those things where I think it's really hard, at least for me, to be kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Maybe that's kind of an error in my approach to this entire season, is that I kind of saw after last year maybe like the high end goals of my racing kind of fall away, but I still thought I could have a good relationship with it, and maybe I could have, but yeah, the injuries just make it to where it's not really worth the risk anymore. And a massive amount of effort goes into organizing everything for these shootouts episodes. Like, it's a lot of time and stress, and I've been going pretty hard on it for 3 years straight, and racing longer than that. So I think besides being beat up physically, also mentally, especially with the concussions, I'm just a bit tired. So it's time for me to kind of just chill out for a little bit. I've learned a ton along the way, and I think in this episode, besides just kind of saying peace out, I kind of just want to reflect on kind of my racing journey, kind of how the video series progressed, and maybe get some good takeaways from my experience. The whole goal of this series was to kind of show my journey, whatever it ended up being, so that you guys, whoever you are, could maybe take a thing or two, apply it to your own riding or racing, so that you didn't make the same mistakes I did, and hopefully could learn from my experience. So my experience ended up being a lot of concussions and a whole lot of other stuff mixed in there. So hopefully, you can kind of reflect back and have at least some good takeaways. I'm definitely super proud of the series and my racing. I haven't felt that way in the moment at times, but looking back, I'm like super proud of what I was able to accomplish. I don't think it ever really culminated in like a result or like a performance that embodied where I think I was as a rider, but knowing that I was there myself is enough for me to be like really happy. I think I pushed myself super hard, and before I got my concussion last year, I was in the best shape of my life. I was riding the best I ever have, and I got the bike to a place where I was feeling better than I ever have before on a bike. And I know that had I continued with that season, I would have eventually gotten to a really good place in my racing. And even without, arriving further down the road of progression in that season, just knowing where I was at in that moment before I got injured, I was actually having one of the best days I've ever had on my bike before I got that concussion. And yeah, racing is a really selfish pursuit at the end of the day, but it just demands a ton of self-growth, and it's a really brutal process in a lot of ways. So I'm just really proud that I was even able to push myself to be riding at that level, and having a shot at competing as a legitimate pro in the US. So with that being said, I kind of have a list of takeaways that I think would be good to run through. So my first one, looking back, is if your priority is racing, don't also try and produce, film, and star, I guess, in a whole video series. Yeah, it's funny because my first year of the video series, I was working full time as well. I wasn't actually working 40 hours a week, but I had, what would be normally a full-time job as a sales rep. So I was racing a pretty heavy schedule. I did an EWS that year, traveled a bunch, and launched this video series, which was super stressful at first. I've come a long way with how comfortable I am in front of the camera, but that first season, those first videos were excruciatingly painful to get exported into the internet. And so that, along with racing, full-time job, it was just such a grind that summer, and I burnt myself out so bad at the end of that. But quitting my job the following year, I felt like, I'll just be focusing on racing and the video series without, a job tying me down. That should be super manageable. But once I told myself I was committing all the way to racing, I realized that is actually a full-time job in itself. If you actually want to take that to your highest potential, it takes all your focus and energy, especially in my position when I was also managing living on the road with a fifth wheel trailer that was kind of janky. It's not the most luxury setup. So, even that alone, in addition to racing, was a pretty full plate. But the video series mixed in, I was still able to get to a really good place, but I dealt with just fighting burnout and kind of overdoing it. It was just a lot. So yeah, I think I've always been really passionate about this video series, but it's been a massive lift to get this series off the ground, every season, especially last year with doing all those testing. I think it actually really benefited me in my riding, because I learned a lot, but just going through that process and filming that entire process was definitely a huge job. That's my maybe my first takeaway is, if you want to race and you can just go race, go race, because it takes a lot to do that. And you don't really realize that till you're in the thick of it, trying to get yourself to a really high level. The second takeaway is just, with racing, it's super hard to separate your self-worth and kind of your ego, I guess, and having that wrapped up in your race results. And again, last year was a super challenging time when it came to that. Again, my preconceived notion was just, it's going to be awesome. I'll have nothing to worry about but train and ride my bike. But then when that's all you're trying to get good at, and you maybe have a bad result, even just a bad day on the bike, it kind of puts your entire life in question. Because it's this is all I'm trying to do, and you have a certain standard when you do that, and when you fall short of it, it really puts a lot of pressure on what you're doing. And I think it's really easy to come in and you know, it's like advice anyone would give you, like focus on the process, not the results. You know, don't define yourself by the results you're getting. But in my situation, when I had probably put like 30 grand, 40 grand into a season, and, you know, it's been a lifelong goal of mine to, you know, progress in this way, it's like, it's much easier said than done to have that separation. And going through it was definitely a big area of growth for me, because for a little bit, I was just punishing myself and digging myself pretty deep into a hole where I was becoming like really unhappy. And then, yeah, once you're unhappy in that way for a certain amount of time, you kind of just like have to like come to terms with it and be like, all right, I can't do this anymore. I have to figure out a way to enjoy this. And it's like almost out of a place of necessity, where it came from me, where I was actually kind of able to let go of that a little bit, and just let myself ride. But that's something I've struggled with, you know, since pretty much forever when it came to racing. Like, I think I always felt like I had something to prove. Like, I was never fast as a junior. Like, I got into racing late, so I never had that, like, you know, those results as a junior to like get some confidence. I was always like questioning whether I could do it, and I really wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. And that just led to, like, I think a really poor race mindset. And yeah, it was just really challenging for me to put aside that kind of maybe inner insecurity that I had when it came to racing, to just let myself, you know, do what I knew I could do. And it was really only when, what helped, it was definitely putting in the work, because then it was easier to believe that I had what it took. And I could kind of actually believe that instead of needing to prove it to myself on every race run. And that allowed me to do a bit of a slower build, to where I actually had some results that kind of gave me a bit more confidence. But to get that base for me was super hard. A lot of crashes in a lot of race runs, pushing too hard and just not having a super mature approach, because I honestly haven't raced that much until the last, you know, few years. So yeah, that's maybe one of the bigger takeaways, is figuring out how to kind of isolate your view of yourself, and separate that from your racing. For me, going forward, bike riding is going to take the back seat for a little bit. I think maybe one of my character flaws is just being like really super into something super hardcore, or like being out. Like, and unfortunately that's kind of the path I've taken with biking. Like I said at the beginning of the video, the past 3 or 4 years has been really intensely involved around bikes, almost exclusively. Yeah, I've stepped in and out here and there. Unfortunately, taken a lot of time off from being injured. But at this point, I've just kind of had enough, and there's not a lot calling me to bikes right now. And even before I got hurt, I was kind of getting wrapped up in a lot of the logistics and not fun parts of putting together this team, getting all the parts and bikes together and putting on the videos. It's kind of the logistics of all that has kind of built into a bigger thing than just taking cameras and going racing and talking about it. So that part I was getting a bit disenchanted with already, and then the injury on top of that just really has me a bit disinterested in bikes right now. I think it's important for me to take a step back and really find that passion again. You know, it's been maybe 5 or 6 weeks since I crashed and rode a bike last, and I'm starting to get a little interested here and there, but it's also like 100 degrees most days where I'm at, and it's really dusty, and I would just rather be chilling by the river and going kayaking, which has kind of been my my sport to kind of catch my attention and keep me active and occupied and entertained. and yeah, there's a lot less risk, and it's honestly a really pleasant experience at the level I'm doing it at. Yeah, mountain biking can be really violent, and you know, smashing some waves, you know, tumbling over in the water is actually pretty fun. So, and relaxing, which is kind of the vibe I'm going for right now. But yeah, kind of an awkward way to end the series. Not how I envisioned it going, but I just got to be kind of honest with myself. I'm not going to force myself to make videos if I'm not passionate about it. And yeah, I hope you guys can understand. And I want to give a huge thanks to all the sponsors of the series. I feel like I'm kind of cutting them short, but I guess that's the risk of sponsoring mountain bike athletes is, yeah, they can get injured. And unfortunately, I just have to put myself and my health first. But a huge thanks to Wolf Tooth, Praxis, Novatech, Maxis, and Olin's, all of which really stepped up to help make this series happen this year. They're all awesome companies. I really stand behind them. A new one that really never got to see the light of day is Velocio. I was really excited to start wearing their stuff at the races. They just launched a new mountain bike line. I'm actually wearing the stuff now. And this gear, it is mountain bike gear, but it's also just really nice gear to be wearing when it's like 95 degrees out. It's really light and fits awesome. So go give them a look if you haven't. And I guess lastly, thanks everyone for following along. The feedback from the series has been almost completely positive, and it's been really cool to, you know, hear the feedback and hopefully provide you guys with videos that could help you guys out in some sort of way. I've always been passionate about videos, and it was a really tough to put myself in this position. It was kind of like an idea I had. I threw it at Vital like in an email that was like 4 paragraphs long, and then they gave me the thumbs up and were like, go for it. And I kind of had to like just run and gun from there and come up with it, which was a super fun experience. A huge thanks to Vital for supporting my vision. They've pretty much said yes to everything I've ever proposed to them, and they've been a massive supporter of mine. I couldn't have gone on this whole journey without them. So I don't know, just a big thanks to Vital, to all the viewers. Connor will be racing the rest of the year. I feel bad for bringing him on board only to, yeah, just kind of peace out midway through the season. But yeah, it's been super cool seeing him kind of develop and yeah, approach and mature with his own racing journey. So I encourage you guys to follow along for what he's up to. He's going to be carrying the flag for Team Let's Go Racing. But for me, that's it. So hope you guys understand. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you when I see you. Peace.